On the 15th of December 1859, Lazer Zamenhof was born to his Litvak Jewish parents in Białystok, a small town which was then within the borders of the Russian Empire, which is now the town of Białystok in Poland. Now, even as a child, Lazer observed that there was something seriously wrong in the town. Some people use the term an ethnic melting pot to describe areas where different cultures live, but in the case of Białystok, it was more accurate to use the term oil and water. The town was home of Russians, Prussians, Poles, Belarusians, Germans, and of course the Yiddish majority, who often related more as Jews than a specific nationality in any case. From what we know, there was a lot of conflict between these different groups, each considering not only their own culture, but also their language superior. It was here that a 12-year-old boy had his revelation. Surely if they could all talk to each other and understand each other, the town would be a much more peaceful place. But of course, under the circumstances, this was impossible. Would any of the factions actually demean themselves enough to learn one of the other languages? Lazer realized that the only solution was to create a new secondary language, what we now call today an auxiliary language, which they could learn and speak between each group, but even if they wished to use their own language at home. Now, this was nothing new. Various people had proposed and even started such a language before, including Sir Isaac Newton, and he was not the first to want to create a language in general in any case. But in Lazer's case, he had a very practical reason for wanting to do so, right on his own doorstep. Lazer Zamenhof initially looked at repurposing an existing language, such as Latin or Greek, but these he deemed far too complicated, antiquated, and frankly dead as a conversational language. Even at the height of the Roman Empire, Latin wasn't actually the language of the general population in any case. Next, he went in totally the opposite direction and tried to create a new language using short words, many of them being only a single syllable. But this proved far too complicated as well. Even he, the language creator, was losing track of what each word actually meant. To create a new language, it would also mean a vast number of short words. Finally, Lazer hit upon an idea. He recognized that many of the words that he was being exposed to on a daily basis had similar components, similar word endings. What if he could construct a language which itself was full of consistent construction possibilities? Gradually, Zamenhof collected words from all over Europe, Russia and Yiddish, and started to construct his language. In fact, as many of the words that he used had Latin or Greek origins before even passing into other European languages, they were probably familiar to more Europeans than even he originally thought. From here, he greatly simplified the grammar, introduced absolute consistencies, and over the course of about 10 years or so, created a language which could be learned even over the space of only a few months. Now, unfortunately, we will never know how far this work matches what we now know of as Esperanto today. Although enthusiasm for the language among his peers at school was quite high, ultimately Lazer had to attend university, where he enrolled to become an ophthalmologist. His father, always skeptical of the practicality of Lazer's pastime in the first place, took his papers off him and put them away while he studied. When he later returned to Białystok after finishing his medical studies, he was horrified to find that his father, rather than being able to carry on where he'd left off, had actually burned all of his papers. Undeterred, Lazer Zamenhof started again and reconstructed his Internacio Lingvo, his universal language, from scratch. He spent years translating literature into Esperanto, and finally in 1887 the first book of Esperanto grammar was officially published in Warsaw. The book, however, was published under a pseudonym. Rather than Ludwig Lazer Zamenhof, he used the alias Dr. Esperanto, in Lazer's new language, One Who Hopes. To say that the book was popular would be an understatement. Even without an interest specifically in languages, in the late 19th century, many people were seeing the type of world that they were now living in. Conflict between various states was going on continually, even if they were not always at actual war. The book sold well initially in Russia and Central Europe, but then quickly in the rest of Europe, America, China, and even Japan and Australia. Initially keeping in contact with each other via letters and periodicals, The new Esperanto speakers around the world soon banded together. While Zamenhof had simply called it the Internacio Lingvo, the universal language, his admirers gave it a new name, based upon the author, Esperanto. Finally, in 1905, Zamenhof bought a third-class ticket so that he could fulfill his invitation to the first World Congress of Esperanto in Boulogne-sur-Mer in France. He stood up and gave his speech in Esperanto, and to his delight, attendees from all over the world listened and actually understood his words.